Sir. Might be useful, maybe.
Why aren't you there? And I ever to get started recording this morning. But again, thank you for reminding me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so noticing the homework, everybody got the first half of the homework done fairly easily. It's when we got into that last problem that seemed to give most folks the trouble. Couple of things that you guys need to remember, and that is that when you are doing cost per unit, you first have to figure out what your total cost is and then divide it by the number of units. Specifically, when you're trying to figure out your cost per setup, what's your total cost per setups, and then how many setups do you have to do? What's your total cost per maintenance hours, and how many maintenance hours are you using? That gives you a cost per setup or a cost per maintenance hour. And then when you calculate it out, if you know how many setups or how many maintenance hours that a specific line is using, then you multiply that out and you say, okay, product A, or in this case, product Logain, had so many setups times so much money per setup to find out what. But then what we had to do was add the cost. So we had to add the direct labor and the setup costs and the maintenance costs together to get what our cost was for that product. But to find out what one of those products was, we had to then divide that by how many times did we make the product A or the Logain. Okay, and then the second half of that problem, requirement 2, seemed to confuse a lot of folks. And basically what that did was that took you back to chapter 2 when we were doing a single cost driver, because if you recall, the requirement 2 said, okay, now let's calculate this as if we were just using calculate. And what I want to do is put up, give me just a second here. While I pull a file up real quick. Hello, Owen.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to pull up a file so I can show you guys something from the homework. But my computer is not wanting to work with me this morning. Actually, it's not the computer, it's the computer operator. So I am still here. You guys can see me. I can't see you right this second. Now let me pull this back up. And I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, can you guys see that spreadsheet?
Not really.
Can you see it on the computer?
Let me log in.
Okay, so hopefully, Owen, can you see it okay?
I can see it pretty well.
Okay. So what you ladies are having a hard time seeing because it's fuzzy projecting on the screen, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. I logged into the meeting.
Okay. That last problem for the homework, okay? And most of you and there was a couple of you that had some problems working this part, but we had to take the total number of setups, or the total cost for the setups divided by the total number of setups to get that it's $1,100 per setup. and the total machine hours or total machine hour cost divided by the total number of machine hours, find out that for every machine hour it's $11.14. And then it's just simply doing the math. You've got for the setups on the low gain, you had 25 hours, so 25 hours times the 1100 came out to 27,500, and over here the same. Now I will tell you that if you guys were working together, because the ladies they found this problem for some reason, this spreadsheet as I made it out is having rounding issues. I don't know why. I even tried to get some expert help on it, and nobody seems to be able to give me some answers as to why it's rounding and doing what it's doing. But the bottom line is, as long as you got an answer that came close to this, the 254.47, you might have had 255, you might have had 253. As long as that answer was close in there, I counted it because I know that there's rounding errors on this spreadsheet. Okay, so everybody pretty much had a fairly easy time, fairly easy. A couple of you had some problems with it. Okay, but then when we go back to chapter 2 and we do it the way we did in chapter 2, we had to take the 94,000. 94,000 was the total indirect manufacturing cost. Sorry about that. So our total indirect manufacturing cost divided by the labor hours gives us $12.53 per labor hour. So if we've got the $12.53 per labor hour, okay, and this we got to multiply. Now, the reason why I put this in this assignment, the reason why I chose this problem from the back of the book or the back of the chapter, was because it compares what we were doing in chapter 3 and the answers we got to what we were doing in chapter 2 and the answers we got. And as management, I wanted to be able to show you guys this. So the way we did it in chapter 2, it looks like our high gain line it costs us way more per product than it does on the low gain line. But that's because we're figuring it on labor hours, okay? And if you look, we've got a whole lot more labor hours involved in the high gain than we do the low gain. So if you figure it on a single cost driver, it's a whole lot more expensive that way. However, if you come up and say, well, let's not figure it on labor hours, and yes, the total cost, but this is figuring out our indirect cost per unit, okay? We're not figuring out our total cost per unit. This is our indirect cost per unit, okay? We're computing the indirect manufacturing cost per unit. If you do it on labor hours, because we have so many more hours, and the reason we've got so many more hours on this side is why? Because we're making a whole lot more of them. So you're going to have more labor hours. But when we break it down and say, well, what actually is going into it? What's part of our overhead for these different lines? Well, we've got a certain number of setups and we've got a certain number of machine hours. When we break it down, you can see that the cost effectiveness on the high gain line, when you break it down using the multiple drivers, shows us that the high gain line on our indirect cost per unit is much more cost effective than our low gain line. So as management, that's one of the things that we have to be able to understand in calculating our cost per unit is which method is going to be the one that's most, I certainly use per product line. Okay, and that's the reason why initially for years, and when I say years, I'm talking 150 years, everybody just did it off of labor hours. Well, this ABC method, okay, the activity-based costing is something that's really only come into play in the last 35 years. More like 45 years, I guess. It's just something that some economists, some smart wizard accounting person said, wait a minute, there's a better way to calculate this. And now this is the method that is now most preferred by managers. Now, It's not always the most preferred by the accountants because it takes a whole lot more things into consideration. It's a whole lot more involved. But as management, this gives us a truer picture of what we're actually doing. Okay, that's the reason I chose that problem for the homework, because I wanted you guys to be able to see that comparison. All right, so let me stop sharing that, get rid of that, get back to the PowerPoint. All right, you guys seeing the domino slide now?
Yep.
Hey, I've actually figured out how to make this stuff work and do it right. Still haven't figured out how to make the videos play though. So when we get to the point then, and there will be a couple of videos this week, we more videos. Watch those and then come back and talk about them afterwards. So anyway, let's get started into today's portion of the lesson. Today we're going to get into an area that we're going to actually start putting together the things that we've been learning to this point, you know, and how do we start as managers, how do we start making intelligent decisions as we move forward? So cost behavior and cost volume profit analysis. It's a big fancy bunch of words and terms to say break-even point. In your all's understanding, what do you think break-even point is?
That's where you start making a profit. So you pay off all your expenses.
There you go. That's the point at which your expenses are covered and now you're making a profit. That's a perfect way to word it, okay? So that's basically what we're going to be doing for this week's lesson, is figuring out, there's a couple other small things thrown in there, but we're going to be figuring out how to calculate for break-even point. Okay, so our first learning objective today is to identify how changes in volume affect our costs. We've got, now, so far we've talked about costing, okay, and that's how we process and calculate different costs. This is going to be straight up, what are our costs? Okay, and as we move forward, I don't believe, I haven't gone back and looked at the homework assignment for this week, but I don't believe you guys actually have to calculate any indirect costing. The story problem in the book gives it to you. You guys will also notice, if you haven't, that we skipped chapter 4.
Yeah, I did notice that.
We moved to chapter 5. I told you at the graduate level as we do the undergraduate level, and I needed you guys to understand what we were doing in chapter 3, calculating indirect cost. Chapter 4 is basically the same thing, only it uses about 5 or 6 different methods to do it. It's kind of like chapter 3 on steroids. And say again?
I said thank you for skipping it.
So I didn't see a need to be redundant and repeat it and learn 5 different methods for calculating it. If you can get the basic methods down, that's the purpose for this class. So we're going to skip chapter 4 and go into chapter 5. All right. Owen's smiling. He's happy too, huh? Okay. So in our costs, now we're not talking about costing, we're talking about cost, our actual cost. So we have variable cost, we have fixed cost, and then we have mixed costs. Mixed is just a matter of, at some point, you're going to have calculations where you have both fixed and variable calculated into what you're doing, okay? So our variable cost is this. Let me just go to the slides. So variable cost changes in direct proportion to the volume activity. So, oops, I was trying to make that slide move up. So let's talk about it. We've got 100 units, okay? Let's say these units are baseball bats. We're making 100 baseball bats, okay? The direct materials to make that 100 baseball bats is $25 per bat. If we're going to make 100 of them, it's going to cost us $2,500. Pretty simple math there, right? Well, if we're going to make 200 of them, now our cost, the total cost is going to go up based on how many you're making. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Our cost per unit doesn't change. Our cost per unit stays the same. Our total cost goes up in direct proportion to how many we're making. Goes up or goes down. Okay? Because if we were at the 300 level mark and we went to 400, it's going to go up. But if we're at the 300 level mark and went down to 200, our cost is going to go down. That's our direct materials cost. This is showing that this is basically that same graph, just showed it to you. If you've got 200 here, your cost is going to be here. But if you've got 300, your cost is going to be up here. Some people, I put it in two different slides. Some people look at this and see this better than they do this type of a chart. I happen to like this type of a chart better. But so fixed costs. Now, fixed costs, on the other hand, do not change over a wide range of volume. Okay, salaries, just straight line depreciation, but let's think salaries. If I'm paying you $10 an hour and you work 10 hours, how much am I paying you?
$100.
Okay. If I started to give you a variable one. If I'm paying you for 40 hours a week at $10 an hour, I'm paying you $400, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, in that week, if you produce one item, no.
What?
If I'm paying you $10 an hour for 40 hours, you're going to get $400, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say I'm paying you to make a table. If you make one table or if you make 20 tables, is your pay going to change?
No.
No. So your pay for me, it becomes like a fixed thing. I'm paying you that $400 whether you make one table or whether you make 20 tables. Does that, see how that works?
Yep.
Okay. So your fixed cost per unit is inversely, nice fancy ways, inversely proportional to activity. Okay. So let's say we're talking about the cost per table. If I'm paying you $400 during that week to make tables and you make one table, what's my labor cost for one table?
For that week?
For that week. If you only make one table that week, what's my labor cost for that one table?
$400.
Okay. But if you made 20 tables that week, what's my labor cost per table?
$400.
No.
If you made 20?
If you made 20 tables, what's my labor cost per table?
Oh, per table. Sorry.
My labor cost is a fixed amount, okay? But the more that you produce during the time that I'm paying you that fixed amount, the less it is per unit. So somebody do the math real quick. What's 400 divided by 20?
I'm just saying. Wait, 5, 10, 15, 20?
20, yeah, 20. What did I say? 20? I added the zero.
$20 a table.
If you make one table, my cost is $400 per table. But if you make 20 tables, my cost is
$20 a table.
$20 per table. Okay? So the more you make in that same period where we have a fixed cost, the less per unit it is. Let me see if I can get back and make this slide. So this is a chart that's going to look like this. Okay? If I make, in this case, it was a $100. Our cost is fixed. It's at $100. Okay? If I make one, it's going to cost me $100 per. But if I make 50, it's going to cost me $2 per unit. You guys tracking with that?
Yep.
Okay. Because this is going to come into play big time in the homework tonight or
Okay.
this week.
In my brain.
Okay. Now we've got times when it's a mixed cost, a mixed cost where we're mixing our variable amount and our fixed amount. Okay. And the best example I could come up with is, I don't know how many of you guys have ever dealt with the electricity bill, but the bottom line is this: you pay a certain amount of money just to have the electricity come to your house. Okay? And usually for that amount of money, you get a certain amount of electricity. So we're talking kilowatt hours. And just for ease of numbers, I'm going to say this. Let's say we're paying $100 for our service plus the first 100 kilowatt hours. So that's a fixed cost, right? We got a $100 cost to have the service come to our house and our first 100 kilowatt hours. So if we use 300 kilowatt hours, well, for the first 100 kilowatt hours, that's going to be caught up in our $100 fixed cost to have service come to the house. But since we use 300 kilowatt hours, now we got to pay 50 cents per hour for the additional 200 hours. So you're going to have a fixed cost, and then above that, you're going to have a variable cost. And that's about as clear as Mississippi mud right now, I know. But let's look at it this way. So we have a fixed cost. So however much we use up to this point is a fixed cost. And then above that, we start adding the variable cost. So if we're trying to figure out what our cost is at this point right here in the line, we have a fixed cost of $2,000 for these $20,000 or 20,000 in sales. We have a fixed cost to here, but we have an additional an additional $1,000 in variable cost, getting us to a total of $3,000 in total cost. So we've got $2,000 in fixed cost plus an additional $2,000 in fixed cost plus an additional $1,000 in variable cost for a total cost of $3,000. You guys tracking with me?
Yes.
Okay. So that's basically just kind of getting an understanding of how those costs work. We have variable cost, fixed cost, and mixed cost. And pretty much all of the homework is going to be working with the mixed cost. There's a couple of them that aren't, but pretty much all of it is going to be working with the mixed cost, where there's a certain amount of fixed, and then you have a variable cost on top, depending on how many units you do use. Our next I don't know. So our next objective is to learn how to calculate our break-even point. Now we're starting to get into the stuff that actually, as a manager, I like to work. Okay, this is the piece that I like to work. So before we do this, we have to make a couple of assumptions. Okay, costs can be classified both as fixed or variable. We've already talked about that. And volume is the only thing that affects the costs. Okay, fixed costs don't change. The reason we have to assume that, for the purposes of what we're doing, is because in the real world, our fixed costs change from time to time. We could have fixed cost that is our rent. Well, sometimes our rent goes up. Okay, so, but we're going to make the assumptions for the purposes of what we're doing here that our fixed costs don't change. Whatever our fixed cost is, it stays consistent throughout the time period that we're talking about. And the only thing that's going to affect our cost is volume. So, I hate that chart. I don't know why I put that chart in there. Forget this picture down here. Okay. So, break-even point. The sales level at which our operating income becomes zero. Okay. As Emma put it, that point where we start making a profit. Yeah, I got the name right this time. The point at which we start making a profit. Okay. Our costs, our sales has brought our cost to a 0 point. We've made enough money to cover our costs. Point. And a contribution margin approach, right? These two right here is going to be the biggest problem as far as you guys trying to figure out and get the homework done. So this section is what most people struggle with on this week's assignment. Okay, so the income statement approach, sales minus your variable cost minus your fixed cost equals your operating income. Now, we've already said that we're calculating right now is our break-even point. So we want our operating income right now to be 0, right? Because that's our break-even point. So sales minus our variable costs minus our fixed cost gives us our operating income, which is 0. So sales price is the sales price per unit times how many units we sold. Okay. Variable cost is our variable cost per unit times how many units we sold. Our fixed cost is just that. It's a fixed cost. Whether we sell 1 unit or whether we sell 100 units, it's a fixed cost. Okay. So we're going to solve for what we're solving for is units sold. Okay. How many units do we have to sell in order to break even? Contribution margin, this is the other approach, takes our sales revenue per unit, our sales, minus our variable cost per unit gives us a contribution margin, okay? Now, contribution margin is just this. Our sales minus our variable cost gives us the amount of money that we have left to apply towards our fixed costs in order to break even. This is just here for the talking purposes. I will come back to this slide. Okay. So we're going to learn how to apply some of this. So if we have our fixed cost plus our desired income, I can't come back to it. I got to hit it now. Sorry. So contribution margin. Let's go back up to this slide. If we have our sales revenues minus our variable cost. Okay, because if you guys remember over here, it's sales revenue minus the variable cost minus the fixed cost. Well, what we're doing is we're stopping right here. Okay, so if we've got our sales minus our variable cost, well, if you take sales minus variable cost to get your contribution margin, the contribution margin then is how much money you have left to pay your fixed cost in order to get your operating income. So if we take our fixed cost and divide it by this contribution margin, it'll give us our break-even point. Contribution margin ratio. If you take your contribution margin and divide it by the sales revenue, it gives you a margin ratio. All of this will make a little more sense when we get into actually working a spreadsheet. Okay? I promise it will. So now let's say we're going to talk about, once we know our break-even point, then we start talking about, well, how much sales do we want to, how much profit do we want to make? How much sales are we doing? Well, if we know what our fixed cost is and we know what our desired income is over and above break-even point, that ratio sales so this is our revenues, okay? This is our revenues, is money that we brought in from sales, whatever. This is what has been calculated as, what is that dot there? I don't remember what that dot is there for. I don't know why that dot's there. Sorry.
It's all right.
So we have our fixed costs. So we know that regardless of how much sales we do, we're going to have to pay this much out, right? This is our fixed cost line. We also have a variable cost. So starting at our fixed cost line over here, well, where this line meets right here, that's our break-even point. Because this is our fixed cost plus our variable cost, and where those meet our revenue line, that's our break-even point. So all of this area here, we would be losing money. All of this area up here, we're making money. This is our profit area. Same thing here. This is our revenues line. This is our fixed income line, our fixed cost line. This is our variable cost line. Where this line comes together is our break-even point. All this here, all this here. And I know you guys are just so excited about this, but it will make sense as we start working through some problems. So like I said, there's our break-even point, there's our profit, there's our loss. As we move forward, what time is it? Yeah, we're going to continue on just a little bit. Cost volume for sensitivity analysis, okay? This is where we as managers look at stuff and we say, what if? What if we raise our price? What if we give it a, put it on sale and don't charge as much for it? What if our fixed costs change because our rent goes up? So this is where we take the same model that we calculate our break-even point, and then we change the different things that are there. Our sales price, our variable cost, our fixed cost, and what does that do to our break-even point? Okay, that's all a sensitivity analysis is measuring where our break-even point changes based on where our what our costs are. Okay, so if we change our sales price, what's that going to do to our, if we increase our sales price, so what's that going to do to our break-even point? What do you think?
It's gonna make it go up.
Our break-even point, you think is going to go up if we increase?
Oh,
What
your
was-
selling prices, then the break even's gonna go down.
Right. So if we figured out our break-even point at a certain price and nothing else changes except for the cost, and I mean except for the price. Conversely, if we decide to, if we're selling pizzas and we know our break-even point for a medium pizza, and we've been selling that medium pizza for $10 a pizza, and we decide to sell it for $8 a pizza, we're going to have to sell more pizzas in order to hit our break-even point, right? Okay. So if our variable costs change, so now we're not changing the price of our pizza. We're still selling that same medium pizza. We're still selling it for $8. But if our variable costs go up because the guy that sells me pepperoni charges me more for my pepperoni, okay, if my variable cost goes up, what's that going to do to my break-even point?
It's gonna go up.
It's going to go up because I'm going to have to sell more pizzas in order to offset my cost. So if we have a cost, an increase in our fixed cost, let's say our rent goes up, what's that going to do to my break-even point? It's going to make it go up as well, right?
Yep.
So anytime our costs go up, our break-even point's going to go up. If our cost goes down, our break-even point's going to go down. Conversely, on our sales, if our sales goes up, our break-even goes down. But if our sales go down, our break-even goes up. All of these are going to affect our break-even point. And this is kind of what we were just talking about there. Margin of safety. Okay. If we know what our break-even point is, if we have an expected sales in units, if we know what our break-even point is, so if we expect 1,000, we know our break-even is 800, and we have a margin of safety of 200 units. Make sense? Pretty simple, right? If our expected sales minus our break-even point gives us our margin of safety. If we expected to sell, if we had a break-even point of 800 and we were only selling 880, then our margin of safety is going to be only going to be 80. Okay. You can also do it on a dollar side. You can take your expected sales in dollars instead of in units. You can take your expected sales in dollars minus your expected or your break-even point in dollars to give you a margin of safety in dollars. Pretty much the same calculation. It's just a matter of what are you using. Are you using units? Let's say this is tickets to a concert. I'm going to sell 1,000 tickets to a concert. I need 800 of them to break even. To have a two. Well, if I'm selling those 1,000 tickets for $1 each, I got $1,000 in sales minus $800 in sales gives me $200 in a safety margin. Okay. All right. Let's take a break, and we're going to come back and work a problem. So I have 8:45. Let's be back at 9 o'clock. Hopefully I can get you guys into the line over there at the coffee shop and back before everybody else gets there.
It doesn't open till 9.
Oh. Well, you know what? I need to take a break for just a minute. So let's take a little bit longer break. I'll give you guys until about 9:10. Hopefully they're over there and they open up a little early.
Thank
So
you.
let's take a break until about 9:10. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Whoa. Sorry. Whoa. Whoa.
Your computer's muted, bro.
needless to say, anybody who has the video running, just fast forward it through this section until we get started again. Owen, are you back with us?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Yeah, just waiting on the ladies to get back. Hopefully they're back here in just a minute or two. Coffee shop must have been opening late or something.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry for all the big pause here, but I needed to go look something up because I started to give you guys an example that would have caused us a problem, and I didn't want to do that. So when they get back, I'm going to have a video for you guys to watch.
Sweet.
Do is send you guys an email real quick. So you can just open the email and go to it without having to type it all in. Let me know when you get that. And do you have it set up so your Canvas goes directly to your email, or do you have to look in the Canvas in the Canvas email?
So I get emails. All of them are linked to my Gmail account.
Okay. So if I send you something in Canvas, it comes to your Gmail?
If it's through my Calvary email,
Okay.
I might have gotten something. Hold on. Oh, yep. Yeah, I got it. It's in Canvas, yeah.
Okay. It's probably in your student email as well, because the Canvas email is linked to your Calvary student email address, so
Right.
probably in both.
We're back. Sorry.
Yay!
Yeah, the cafe was a little bit.
A little bit busy.
Yes,
Yes.
there was like people lined up at the door at like 8:50
Yeah.
something.
So who's running the coffee shop these days?
Zach Kirkman.
Well, you tell Zach that Professor Dave said he needs to be opening earlier.
Okay,
So you
I
guys
will.
get your coffee before you come to class.
Okay. I'll text him.
Amen.
Tell him if I have to drive all the way up there and kick his butt, I will.
Oh, got him.
Hey, he'll get it because I was always threatening to kick his butt when he was in my class. So
Okay.
okay, so I sent you guys an email, whether all three of you open it or just one of you. We're going to watch a video now that basically will go over, and that's the reason I had to pause. This video should have been in there, and it wasn't. Normally we watch that after we go through all those nice, boring, dry slides. We normally would watch that video. So I sent you guys on break while I went and found that video again. So I'm gonna have you guys watch that video, and then we're gonna come back and talk about it before we move forward, okay? All right, so everybody go watch the video.
It's almost- Whoa, whoa, whoa.
and for those watching online, if you didn't get the email, this is the link that you need to go to watch the video.
go.
Hey, there they are.
We didn't spill coffee this time.
So did that little video help? It wasn't but 7 minutes, but did that kind of put some continuity to the slides that we talked about earlier?
Yeah, his example was, because he used like a real life example, was helpful.
Yeah.
As always.
That's one of the reasons why I like to use that guy specifically. Is I like his slides because he's able to take real life examples and plug them in, and he has the medium in which he can draw on the board and it shows on your screen and everything better than the medium that I have. So I just have a difficulty doing it the way he does. I don't have that set of tools available to me. So what I want to do now, let's start sharing these slides again. Okay, again, for those of you that were watching the video, this is the video we just took about a little over 7 minutes to watch. God gives us good examples of the application that we've talked about in our presentation for the first hour this morning. Okay, so let's work through a problem. Let's go to exercise 5-20 in the book. And that is on page 246. So go to page 246 in the book. And we're going to work through an exercise here in class using the slides. But I'm going to read through the story problem as we do it so that we can track along. Okay? So Country Road Driving School charges $230 per student to prepare and administer written and driving tests. The variable costs are $70 per student. Okay, so now we've got a couple of key figures there already, right? We know that they charge $230, so that's their revenue, right? So it's $230 per student, so they're already breaking it down and giving you the per student cost. And somebody else has already calculated and figured out that the variable cost is $70 per student. Okay, and they say they have an annual fixed cost of $112,000. Right, so what we're going to do is requirement 1. For each of the following independent situations, calculate and contribute. So we want to calculate our break-even point with no changes in the information. Okay? So they told us that our sales price is $230 per student. They told us that our variable cost is $70 per student. Well, we know if we're looking at that contribution margin like the video showed us, it's going to be $230 minus the $70 gives us $160 in our contribution margin. $100,000 a year and divide it by our contribution margin of $160 per student. What is our break-even point in students? Somebody get your calculator out and do the math for me. What's our break-even point in the number of students that we need?
Fixed cost. What's 112 divided by 160? 120,000 divided by 160. Say it one more time. 112,000. 112,000. So add 3 zeros to 112 divided by 160. 750.
750 students.
750 students. Did I put that in there? No, I didn't actually put that in there. So go ahead, Owen.
I got 700.
Oh. It doesn't bug back.
Well, let's see what I get. 'Cause I didn't put it in the slide.
On 1A, right? Yeah. Owen, are you on 1A?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 750? Okay. So if we go to 1B and we say the sales price decreases from 130 to 200, what do we expect is going to happen? Remember we talked earlier, if our price goes down, what's that going to do to our break-even point? Break-even point should go up. So if you look, nothing else changed, okay? Our sales price went down, but our fixed price stayed the same, and our variable price stayed the same. So we got 200 unit or $200 down instead of 230. So what's that going to do to our student cost? What'd you get, Owen?
So, actually don't have the book on me.
Okay, well, look at the slides that I'm sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, we changed it to 200. So what's the 112,000 divided by 130?
It's about 861.5.
There you go. Okay. So now and this is going to be important for the homework this week. When we change the next variable, we have to go back to the original set of numbers. Okay, so like you guys are going to start off working problem 5.5 in the homework. When you go to 5.6, it tells you to change something. When you go to 5.7, you have to go back to the original numbers from 5.5 then and change what happens for 5.7. Does that make sense? Because that's important in the homework this week. So we're going to go back to the original problem, but this time instead of decreasing the sales price, we're going to decrease the variable price. So if you notice, I reset on the slide, if you notice, I reset this to 230, but I changed the variable price. Now, if the variable price goes down, what should happen? Our break-even point's going to go down as well, right? Because if our costs go down, our break-even goes down. Okay? And the reason for that is that we've got to 230, but now instead of 70, we've only got 50 here, which makes our contribution margin higher. So we've got more money in the contribution margin to go towards paying the fixed costs. So if we take the 112,000 and we divide it now by the 180, instead of 700 or 750 that it was, it's now 622. You guys see how that relationship works?
Yep.
If your sales price goes up, your break-even point's going to go down. So on the sales price, it's going to be whichever way your sales price goes, the break-even point's going to go the opposite. On your cost, whether it's variable cost or fixed cost, whatever direction the cost goes, the break-even point goes the same way. If cost goes down, the break-even goes down. Cost goes up, the break-even goes up. Okay? Now in this case, what they did was they changed the break-even, or they changed the fixed cost. Again, if you've got less fixed cost and you've still got the same contribution margin, because this up here went back to the original problem. So your break-even cost is always coming down. This money will go further towards paying it. And then learning objective 5, we're not even going to touch. That's in here for when I teach the graduate stuff. Okay. I didn't take it out for this class, and I should have. So we're not even going to touch learning objective 5. And that gets us to the end of the chapter. So here's what we're going to do. Kind of like the guy in the video did, we're going to come up with our own problem.
Okay.
And let's see if I can figure out a method to do this. And I really see his being able to mark on the board and everything comes. If I were in the classroom, this is where I normally would have the marker, and I'd be scribbling all over the board in the classroom. So I just haven't figured out how to do this when I'm trying to teach it extension learning. So I guess at this point, what we're all going to have to do is the old-fashioned thing and grab a piece of paper, and you're going to have to draw it out yourself. Okay. So let's come up with, it's going to be my company. So we're going to come up with Dave's Pizza Company.
Okay.
And it would help if I could find a pen that would write. Or a pencil that had lead in it. There, old-fashioned number 2 pencil. So we're talking Dave's Pizza Joint, okay? So we're not going to sell multiple. That's that last part of chapter 5 is multiple product lines. So like you guys know, a pizza joint sells. They got small pizzas, large pizzas, medium pizzas.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just going to pick one pizza line, okay? So we're going to say large pizzas.
Okay.
Okay. How much do we sell our large, how much you guys think we're going to sell our large pizzas for? Give me a price.
$15.
Okay, so it's going to be $15 per pizza. Okay. So if we're going to sell that pizza for $15 per pizza, how much is it going to cost us to make that pizza? As far as our variable cost, the flour and the yeast and the tomato sauce and the pepperoni and whatever we're going to put on it.
$8.
$8 per pizza.
Yep.
Are we making up numbers?
Okay, now as I'm writing stuff down, again, if I was there, you'd see me writing on the board. Okay, so a large R next to the $15 would be our revenues. Okay, that's our sales, and next to the $8 we would have VC for variable costs. Okay. Okay. What's our fixed cost per year? How much do you think our rent and utilities and everything is going to cost us? I'll give you that one. Let's say it's going to cost us $600,000 for the year.
$600.
That's our fixed cost. Okay. So now the first thing we have to do, we're gonna do this using the variable, using the income statement method. You know what? Hang on just a second. I may have. No, I don't have one for this week's exercise. Okay. I thought I might have done one on the slides, so. Well, let's see. We don't need that. I'm just going to stop sharing because I don't have anything more there. Okay, so let's go back and think about. I'm going to pull a spot open in the book so I can tell you guys where to look. Okay, in your book, if you have it available, look at the top, look at page 228. Because we're going to use both methods on this pizza company thing to figure this stuff out. So we're going to use the income statement approach. So the income statement approach says our
What page are we on again?
on page 228.
Oh, no. Oops.
Okay. So using our pizza company, if you look at that first box in the middle of the page, it's got a formula that you're going to use. Okay. So sales cost minus cost equals our operating income. And since we're calculating for break-even point, our operating income is going to be 0. Okay. So we have to take our cost per unit, which is $15, times the units sold, and I just use US to abbreviate the units sold, minus the variable cost per unit, which we said was the $8, times the units sold.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, if we don't know how many units we've sold, what do we do in the equation?
Okay. So I'm gonna try to write this a little bigger and then hold it up in front of the camera, okay?
Okay.
Also, all these questions. Sorry. I think it's not so
Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but you see where it says $15
Oh, yeah, now I
times
understand.
units sold?
That's where you're putting the US.
Yeah.
Okay,
Minus $8 times the units sold.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you see you got the same thing in the book here. See where it switches from the blue to the green?
Oh, yeah. I had a blonde moment.
There's a reason I told you to look in the book.
I know, sorry.
Okay. Now, since we know that we're calculating for units sold, we're now going to say, okay, we have $10 minus the $6 times units sold. You guys see that, how that works there?
Yeah.
So it's the 10 minus 6 times the units sold. But we need to move the fixed cost to the right side of the equation. So if we're subtracting it from the left side to move it to the right side, remember back in your 8th grade math class, what do you got to do to move it to the other side of the equal sign?
You have to add it.
If you're subtracting it on the left, you got to add it to the right. Okay. So now it's the $10 minus the $6 times units sold equals, we now have 10,000 on the right side of the equal sign. So just simply doing the math, 10 minus 6 is 4 times the units sold. You guys following that math that's in the book there?
Yeah.
So to get our units sold, if we're multiplying the units sold times 4 on the left side to get the units sold on the right side, what do we got to do? We got to do the opposite, right? So now instead of multiplying it, we're going to move the units sold to the right side of the equal sign. So we're going to divide it. So to get our units sold is going to be the $10,000 divided. Now I'm using the example in the book right now when I'm talking these numbers. Okay. So let's use our example. So now we have the 15 minus the 8
7.
times the units sold equals the 600,000 on the right side of the equal sign. So now we say 7 times the units sold equals the 600,000, or the units sold equals, and since you guys gave me the numbers, I wasn't prepared for this. Let me do the math here real quick. So 600,000 divided by the $7. What is that? What does that 7 represent, by the way? Now we're doing the income statement form here, okay? But what does that number 7 represent?
It's something with a sale price and variable cost, so not your fixed cost because that's the 600,000, but sales revenue.
If you remember,
Is it your-
the sales minus the variable, that gives you your contribution margin. Okay? Okay, so let me get a marker so this is a little more seeable. And I apologize, I wish I was there so I could be doing this on the board.
It's all right.
Yes, I got 2.
Wait, once we find the units sold, then do we multiply that back into the equation to find the break-even point?
Correct.
Okay. Just put the units sold into this equation up here again. I need it. Oh wait, I have it.
Hey, Austin. Is your profit before or after taxes?
What?
Like, is your profit, like,
Without it.
you get a profit, right? Is it before or after? Is it what's going in your pocket?
Okay, I'm going to hold this up in front of the screen again. I think it's a little more readable now. Okay, so if you look at it, it's the $15 times the units sold minus the $8 times the units sold equals the 600,000, which is our break-even point. So then we can move the units sold outside the parentheses and say the 15 minus the 8 equal time 15 minus the 8 times the units sold equals the 600,000. So if we actually do the math, then it's 7. Hold on to the paper, David.
Wouldn't you
7 times the units sold equals the 600,000. So our units sold, we have to move the 7 to the right side. So we're gonna, since we're multiplying it on the left side to get it to the right side, we got to divide, right? So we take the units sold divided, or excuse me, we take our fixed cost, the 600,000 divided by the 7. So in order to break even, we have to sell 8,500, or excuse me, 85,714 pizzas in that year in order to break even. Make sense?
Yep.
Can you guys follow that?
Yes. I think that's
Okay. Now, if I told you that I wanted you to do a problem, do a math problem to validate that, how do you think you could go about doing a math problem to validate that?
You just put it back into the equation at the top.
Okay.
So put your 85,714 into the units sold, where our equation was that we started with, that equals 0.
Okay, but I'm gonna, yes, you are correct. But what I want to do is to show you a way that I think will work a little easier for you. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna write this out again. I would be doing it on the board. Okay. So we said, I gotta get my numbers back out here. I stuck them in the back here.
What? Oh, sorry.
Bear with me, y'all. Helps if I do the math right. pen. Let me write this out so that I can hold it up in front of the screen for you guys. Okay, so the first part of this, sorry about that delay. The first part of this is going to look like this. We have our revenues here. This is 85,714, which is what we said our break-even point is. If you multiply that times 15, you get the 1,000,000. What is it? 1,285,710. Okay, our variable cost was the same, 85,714 times the $8. I didn't write that out, but times the $8 in fixed costs is the 6,000 or 685,710. So if we subtract those two, if you do that math, you're going to get 600,000. Our fixed cost we said was 600,000. So if we take our fixed cost, our contribution margin minus our fixed cost, our operating cost, or at this point our break even, you see how you can prove that the 85,714 works. If you go back and you multiply what you came up with is your BAP or your BEP. If you multiply that out times how many pizzas we said we were going to, how much we said we were going to sell each pizza for, you multiply that out times what we said our variable cost was, multiply those out, add them together, and that's your contribution margin. Well, if your contribution margin matches your fixed, then it's going to be 0. So that's how you take the number that you come up with on, because you're going to have to do that on your very first problem. You're going to have to come up with a break-even point. And then you have to prove that the number that you come up with as your break-even point works. Make sense? Okay. Once you have figured out the first problem, remember 5.5 is the first problem. Then it's going to tell you to change something going into 5.6. And then it's going to tell you to change something going into 5.7. But before you change something going into 5.7, reset all the numbers back to 5.5.
Wait, we actually don't have 5.7.
Hang on. Let me just pull the homework up. There we go. All right, you guys see in the spreadsheet? Okay, so 5.5, you're going to calculate like we just did for the pizza shop, okay? So it says compute the number of tickets that you need to sell for the story time amusement park. And then it says then conduct a numerical, that's supposed to be problem. I don't know what happened there, to show your answers correct. So the example we did where I scribbled it out on the paper, you need to do something similar to that to show that what you came up with as your break-even point is correct.
Okay.
So you're going to multiply what you came up with times what the story problem gives you as the sales, the variable cost. Do your math, make sure you got your contribution margin, subtract your fixed cost from it, it should come out to 0. Okay? Then you have to figure out this contribution margin ratio in order to do in dollars. And that you will find that in the book. It's in my slides, but you'll also find it in the book. I'm trying to find this specific spot. Oh, by the way, if you guys get lost, the thing that we did on the paper here is at the bottom of 223.
Oh,
Thank you.
was 223.
Where's the contribution margin ratio? Okay, when you get to doing the contribution margin ratio, which is the second part of problem 5.6, that's on page 225. See, you even got a professor telling you where to go to figure out how to do your homework. Okay? But then, so we got 5.5, 5.6, and then it skips to 5.8, okay? But you notice it says refer back to S5.5. So before you make any changes, in order to work 5.8, make sure your stuff is reset to 5.5. Then when you go to 5.9, again, make sure everything's reset back to 5.5 before you work 5.9. Same thing for 5.10. Make sure everything is reset back to 5.5 before you work out 5.10. Hint, hint, hint. Professor knocking on wood, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
If you work out 5.5 and you do it correctly, when you get to doing 5.8 and 5.9, the formulas are the exact same.
Oh.
Just change the numbers. So when you get to doing 5.8 and 5.9, don't reinvent the wheel. Figure out 5.5 and figure it out correctly, and you will know if you've done it correctly, because when you do your formula to prove it, if everything proves out correct, then you know you've done it correctly. So when you get to doing 5.8 and 5.9, use the same formulas. Okay? Any questions?
Was the checking your answer, that's on page 223, correct?
Yeah, this stuff here that, hang on. This stuff here that we did in order to check your answer,
Yes.
For the one we did where we just made up numbers, okay? That's the little blue box at the bottom of 223.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? If you follow that formula like we did here in the class for the pizza shop, you will work it out and you'll be able to prove that the break-even point that you came up with is accurate. And once you know that it's accurate, then if you use the same formula, when you get down into working 5.8, 5.9, you won't have to prove it again. You can. You won't have to prove it again, though, because you will have already proven that your formula is working correctly.
Thank you.
Okay? I have everybody's homework for chapter 3 graded. I was working on that this morning to finish grading those. Some of them I already had graded yesterday, but I finished grading all of chapter 3's homework. I will wait. I've still got 2 of the quizzes that are due in, and I want to wait until I have all of the quizzes in before I start grading them. Hopefully those will come in today. And I can get started grading them tomorrow evening and Saturday. Okay? So, but I promise you guys I'll have your quiz grades and everything done, caught up, so that you guys know where you stand. I will also tell you this. If your score's not where you want it to be as far as the class, don't panic. I may have said this the other day, but I'm not sure. But usually, chapters 1 and 3 are hardest. And the grades for that homework usually starts to come up. And for a couple of the homework assignments, I think in chapters 5 or chapter 6 and chapter 7, I actually put some bonus points there where you guys could get some bonus points to make up something that you might have missed at the earlier part. So don't panic about it. We'll make sure you get through. As long as you're giving me an honest effort, we'll make sure you get through. Okay?
Thank you.
You guys have a good week and good luck on the homework, and I'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a nice day too.
Bye.
Thank you.
So, I see your truth.